What is a polynomial? A polynomial is an expression that contains multiple terms. Yes, multiple, that's why you see the word poly in polynomial. I'll give you a couple examples here. So we could say that if you have something like 10x to the 7 minus 9x squared plus 15x to the 3 plus 2, that would be an example of a polynomial. Another example would be something like 9a squared minus 5. And this is actually a special type of polynomial, which you would call a binomial. It's called binomial because bi meaning two, like a bicycle, right? And you have two terms. Another type of polynomial is if you have something just like 6. 6 is technically a polynomial. It's a special type, just like the binomial was. This one's called a monomial, because mono meaning one, there's only one term. And so you can probably guess what I'm going to show you next. You could have something like 7x squared plus 3x minus 4. That's also a polynomial, and because there's three terms, 1, 2, 3, that's what you might call a trinomial. So these are all types of polynomials. Now, what doesn't count as a polynomial? Because I just wrote a bunch of expressions down, but there are other expressions that wouldn't fit the criteria for a polynomial. So what are those criteria? What are the rules? Well, basically, the exponents that you have on the variables have to be non-negative integers. So you could say that the exponents must be non-negative, and they also have to be integers. And so what does that mean? Well, if you look at those examples we just showed, all the exponents are whole numbers that are positive, right? 7, 2, 3. There's no exponent on this last term, but really that's because you have an x here to the exponent of 0, because anything to the exponent of 0 is 1. So you can pretend that you have an x to the 0 here. So that also counts because 0 is non-negative, right? Just like here, you have a 2 and then an a to the 0 here because that's a 1, right? It's not written. This 6 here, you could say there's a x to the 0 here if you wanted to, right? That 0 is a non-negative integer. Same with this last trinomial here. You have x squared, x to the 1. Here you have x to the 0. So those are all non-negative integers. So if you were given something like, 10x to the negative 2 plus 3x minus 1, this is not a polynomial because this exponent is negative. So this does not count as a polynomial. Further, you could have something like 9a to the 1/2 plus 2a minus 3. This is also not a polynomial because this exponent here is not an integer. It is a fraction, right? It's 1/2. That is not a non-negative integer. That is a fraction. It has to be a whole number. So that's also not a polynomial. Another example would be something like 5 to the exponent x plus x squared minus 3. This is also not a polynomial because this exponent is not an integer. It is a variable, right? It has to be a whole number, right? So you can't have a variable in your exponent. So this does not count as a polynomial.